guys, welcome back to my channel, and this is going to be a bit of a different video from my normal content. Trust me, I just got back from traveling. I'll get into it in a little bit, but I will be resuming my normal content soon. I'm also going through a transitional period. I had an injury a couple of weeks ago, a pretty severe burn. I actually quit my job because of it. I've been kind of looking for a reason to quit, and tomorrow I need to apply for some jobs and all that just so I can have work until I leave the state in January. Now, I am saying all of this, and I kind of want to go through this as a bit of a story time, a bit of an anecdote for my situation and why I feel the way I do and why this is something I feel so strongly about, and to almost give like a little bit of advice for other people, because this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, and it's the mentality of risk taking and stepping outside of your comfort zone and why that's a good thing. Now, before I say anything else, I want to preface this by saying you should always be careful about what you're doing. Don't be reckless to a point of endangering yourself. Always make sure you do your research with what you're doing. Make sure you are safe. Make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you have contingency plans. I'm the kind of person who plans for everything. I plan for the worst scenarios in every situation. But all of that information, I know some people are very, very reckless, and I don't encourage just jumping into things and being reckless in a sense that it's dangerous. So when I say just go ahead, just like take that step, do something, I'm not saying literally just I'm not saying just run away from home, drop all your bags, and like try to start your life when you have like no plans. I'm not saying move to LA when you don't have a house and like just drop all this shit and then just run out of money. And like I'm not saying don't do anything actually stupid. Don't travel somewhere if you have not researched, if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know like all that, right? I'm saying that just as like a disclaimer before I get into what I'm like the main point of this like topic. So essentially, there's something that I realized, and I kind of want to tell you guys a story about something that happened recently before I back up and kind of give the context for why I feel this way and why I think this is important. So, recently I was talking to some of my family about going on a trip in a couple of months. I have all of this planned out, but I was coming up short when it comes to finances, and I think I've got it all figured out now. But I was a little bit stressed about it, and I was kind of wondering if I could borrow some money and all of that. And my family was not very supportive of me going on this trip. This is the first time that I've traveled by myself, and they just thought that it wasn't safe. It was a safety concern, that I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't perceive the danger of the situation, and that it's not safe for me because I'm young and just I'm alone. Trust me, if I had a friend who I could do this with, I absolutely would, but I really don't have any friends here, and I'll get to that. So, this kind of thing of there's like this perceived danger, or that I'm not old enough to comprehend the danger. That was kind of what some of my family was kind of implying, since it's the first time I have traveled by myself. Now, I want to get all of this out there and say that I respect and I understand some of the concerns that were going on. Now, for another piece of context, things got kind of ugly, but we had just gotten back from a very long, very busy day, so we were all exhausted, and things got patched up. We apologized, we communicated clearly after that, and everything is mostly pretty much patched up now. I'm not going into too much detail about this in case any of my family ends up watching this video. I don't want to out anybody, but I said some things that weren't very nice, and the whole situation was just kind of frustrating, and I totally understand. So moving from that, I kept telling my dad, particularly, I was like, I have to do this, like I have to just, like, if I never try new things, I'll never learn. If I never do anything, I'll never learn, like, how to do stuff. If I never, like, go out into the world and do things. And kind of, like, I feel like my family is kind of trying to get me to do things at their pace. and giving me this opportunity, giving me the school opportunity, which is great, and I'm taking the opportunity. I want to go, but it's kind of like, oh, you're not ready to be independent yet, fully independent, so we're gonna send you to this school, and you know, you'll be living at school and all that. And like, I understand like a lot of where that's coming from, and I'm actually looking really forward to going to school. I've never thought I would say that, but again, so much has changed in my life, and for the better, honestly, and I need to talk about it. And it is a long story. Sorry I'm scratching this. Again, I had some pretty severe burns here, and they're healing up very well, but they are just very itchy. So basically, I have to kind of go back a bit to give context for this, and I was thinking about this earlier, and it kind of just all came together in my mind. So the context for this situation is mainly that when I was very young, I showed early traits of autism, neurodivergency, all that kind of thing. And it's obviously not as diagnosed in girls, and people didn't understand it as much with what was going on. So I was diagnosed with PDD and OSP when I was 3, but at that time, they didn't really refer anyone or really give anyone else. And I live in the state of Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania has a lot of weird homeschool laws. I don't know the entirety of Pennsylvania's homeschool laws anyway. My mom wanted to homeschool me very much because her sister did it, and again, this is something that frustrates me and that I wish I could kind of tell her and put that all down, is like that just because something works for one person doesn't mean it will work for other people. And I do think there were some very valuable things I did learn from being homeschooled that I would not have learned in a traditional schooling environment, and my experience wasn't entirely negative. I want to get that out there, and I definitely had a better homeschooling experience through most of my elementary and middle school, minus the social interaction part. In terms of the actual schooling, I actually had a pretty positive experience with homeschooling. Now, this isn't really about homeschooling in particular, but it is relevant to the topic. So, as I started to get a bit older into like 8th grade, I was taking pre-algebra and algebra. And my mom, she was mainly teaching me. My dad was very uninvolved with my schooling because he was mainly working. And my mom, she was starting to get to stuff that she didn't know. So we would have to like walk through it, or she had like forgotten how to do math, or they had like changed it or whatever, new math, I don't know. And we would have to like walk through it and stuff. And, you know, it was getting to a point where it was kind of difficult. And then she got sick. She got cancer. It was really bad, and everything kind of spiraled from there. So I never had many friends as a kid because I was very antisocial. I did not know how to socialize really because I was never really given that many opportunities. The only places I really had to socialize were like church programs and stuff. And we had camp. Summer camp was where I would see my friends, but we had day camp. But unfortunately, I never got to see them during the school year. And when I was younger, I wasn't allowed to have a phone or anything because my dad my mom never had a phone, and my dad was kind of like, he had like a track phone, but it was kind of at that age where it was like everyone kind of was starting to have like smartphones around like 2012, 2013. So I was like 11, and I couldn't stay in touch with my friends. I was getting to this age where I was starting to like long for like more long-term relationships. I was very, very lonely. I was longing for extracurriculars, chance to socialize. I did end up joining the Irish dance, which helped a lot with that. And I joined a youth group, which, although I'm not religious anymore, and I'm not really in touch with many of the people from that youth group, and I did have issues with the church and all that, I do still value having that experience because it gave me friends. It gave me an opportunity to socialize when I was in my like late middle school, high school years. It gave me opportunity to socialize. So, getting all that out there, I do not like going outside of my comfort zone, and I have always been scared of going outside of my comfort zone and scared to try new things. So when I was younger, now I had homeschool co-ops explained very poorly to me, but my mom would be like, oh, if you want friends, we can join a homeschool co-op, because I think she did care and she understood that I wanted to see friends and stuff. But it was just, and keep in mind, my autism was completely undiagnosed for years, and because Nobody ever pursued it. I actually had an incorrect diagnosis. I had an OCD diagnosis for years, and it was just, the whole thing was an absolute mess with the diagnostic side of things. But because nobody knew what was going on, I mean, unfortunately, when I was younger, a lot of stuff was just either I just thought was normal, or it was treated as, like, behavioral issues. So, like, I would have meltdowns and stuff that would be treated as behavioral issues. Or, like, thought it was normal to, like, I don't know, eat the way I eat, or, like, being hypersensitive, that kind of thing. Like, I just didn't think about it when I was younger. But the reason I'm getting all that out there is because, there was this kind of this, like, weird nagging thing in the back of my mind that whatever was going on, I wasn't happy with it. I wasn't happy with my life, but I didn't really have, like, a concrete plan. And, you know, as a kid, I would say all sorts of things I wanted to be. I'm like, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a librarian. I want to be a school teacher. You know, I would do that as a kid, right? Like, every kid does that. And I would say, I want to buy a big house on a hill and get a wind farm. I want to buy a blue convertible. And, when I was about 11 or 12, I was very, very, like, hometown pride and very adamant about staying where I was and, you know, supporting the town and that kind of whole thing. And, when I was a bit older, when I was about 13, I was very, very into Route 66. That was, like, a huge special interest of mine. I really, really wanted to, just, like, drive the whole stretch of what's left of Route 66. I wanted to, like, that whole small town thing. I was, like, totally into that. And that was, like, something that I totally wanted because it was comfortable. I come from a fairly small town. It's not tiny, but it's not huge. And, I'm in the Rust Belt, and it's just kind of something that felt comfy, homey, and natural to me. Even though I didn't, like, realize that. There's always this thing that's very car-centric, because, of course, America is unfortunately very car-centric. And, you know, I was always like, oh, what kind of car am I going to have, and what kind of all that. Although, but as I got older, like I said, my mom was sick, and at that point, I couldn't really think ahead at all. I really couldn't plan for my life, and so when she was sick, I was just kind of thinking, oh, she's going to get better, because also I was kind of indoctrinated into religion, and I genuinely believed that it would work out because God and healing, and people would come over and pray over her and say they felt warmth and they felt a healing presence, and I'd hear that, and I'd think about all that, and I would like, just think, oh, this is a good sign, and there were all these, like, good signs in the right direction. So this whole time, because I was homeschooled, I was going back and forth between people's houses, because the other thing I should mention is that I have serious anxiety issues, unfortunately, like I said, I had, like, no experience socializing, so a lot of, like, what I learned was just from, like, reading books and stuff, and I'm not much of a reader nowadays. I can't like, really pay attention to books, but when I was, like, younger, in middle school, I didn't have, also, we were behind technologically because we didn't have good internet and all that, so I just kind of, like, read a lot of books because it was what I did. I was bored. So, I read, so this is something that actually happened before my mom got sick, but it's a story that I've told on this channel years ago. But it was the story about the dog that chased me when I was about 13, and this guy, this was in my hometown, which if you find out where it is, I've never felt, like, particularly unsafe in my town. I do know that, like, at night, I wouldn't feel safe going out, like, at night or anything, but I've never felt particularly unsafe, but we do actually have one of the higher crime rates in the states, in the state, so, it is a little bit dicey, and, so I was out, and I got chased by this dog, and I screamed, and this guy pulls up, and he says, and, you know, we go through this whole thing, and then he says, do you want me to watch you walk home so the dog doesn't get you? And I had read a book where some guy was kidnapping girls in cars, and the main character had, like, nearly gotten kidnapped, and the whole thing was just, like, oh, listen, and, like, do not get into a car with a stranger, and this wasn't exactly that, but, like, the whole situation just made me feel, I was just instantly like, no, I'm not gonna do this, no, and, you know, I did the right thing, I said no thanks, I walked off, right? And that's, like, the only time that I have ever, like, been in, like, real, like, perceivable danger. Because, I mean, there are times where I've been in, like, I'll create scenarios, I'll have panic attacks, and then there are times where I've had fear and, like, danger of, like thunderstorms and weather and stuff. But this was, like, the only time I was, like, really in, like, somebody did it or said something to me that was just so incredibly creepy and just so uncomfortable. And, you know, I handled the situation. It was kind of second nature to me. I'm like, in the back of my mind, and trust me, when I say this, I'm not victim blaming. Now, I want you to understand, this is just how my mind works. Like, who would be stupid enough? How could you be stupid enough to get in a car with a stranger? How could you be stupid enough to follow a stranger down and out? You know what I mean? That's the kind of thing that, like, my brain tells me. Now, of course, people who do that, I understand there's coercion, there's pressure, there's, you know, being sheltered, there's all that stuff. I'm not victim blaming. I don't know everyone's situation. But I'm just saying, for me, it's something that's always kind of been second nature, is, like, having a sense of street smarts in a way. So I say all this to say that I feel like I'm pretty good at handling that kind of thing if I did get into any situations when I'm traveling. Now, so getting back kind of to the trajectory of the story, when my mom passed, my dad had been very uninvolved in homeschooling, but I guess she wanted him to keep homeschooling, and he asked me, he gave me several options, and he gave me an option of doing PA Cyber, he gave me an option of going to this Christian school, and I was like, no. He gave me an option of going to people's houses, or he gave me an option of staying home by myself, and I chose to stay home by myself. And the reason for that was for a couple reasons. One, I didn't want to be a burden to all the people who we were having to send me to people's houses. I was 15, and that was just embarrassing. Okay, that's not how you homeschool. And my dad still says to this day that he should have done that, and I should have been put in school. I don't understand. But I also wish that I had said something and I had taken that step. So at this point, I had never been in any, like, proper school. The only experience I had was, like, with dance classes with other people. So I was so fucking nervous, and I just was not ready to join, like, a school. Now, had I taken that step, or had somebody, like, put me in school, I think that would have benefited me a lot. Because what ended up happening was that I was home alone, and I started taking classes outside at this co-op, but it was only 2 days a week, and I got those classes, and it benefited me so much because I was able to actually do my work. But the stuff I was supposed to do at home independently and for my dad, I couldn't do it. And there were multiple reasons for this. The two main reasons: one is that I'm autistic, and I do not work well when I don't have somebody, like, giving me set deadlines, giving me set, like, hey, I have to do work in my own time. I am not good at, like, setting deadlines for myself and, like, pacing myself in a way. And two, I was depressed. Now, I didn't really know what to do with my life. Unfortunately, I never really had any concrete plans. You know, as I got older, I started to think I didn't want to go to college because I kind of didn't want school, and I also just didn't think I would have the money to go to college. So I made a video very early on in the life of this channel that called Virginia Tech Was My Destiny, and it was a joke. I mean, that's obviously not what happened, but I had a crush on this streamer, and he had gone to Virginia Tech, and for some reason I felt strongly about needing to go to Virginia Tech. I don't know why. I did visit, and, like, this was right after my mom passed away. I visited campus. We didn't, like, tour inside or anything. I just was outside, and I was confused. I had this feeling of, like, do I belong here? Like, but something didn't feel right, because I was like, I like this. And obviously, you know, in order to actually get into a tech school, I'd have to be, like, good at math and have proper math classes, and, you know, that was just something that wasn't going to happen. But, you know, at this point, I was, like, 15. I was still figuring things out. So, I really, really wanted to go to Virginia Tech for, like, literally the only reason was that I had a crush on a guy who had gone there. Like, I don't even know. I don't know what my mindset was. I think I was just grasping at straws. I just needed something to, like, look forward to, something to hold on to, just to give some sort of, like, future for myself. And, you know, that ended up falling through. That ended up not happening. And, you know, after a while, that interest kind of faded, and I just kind of, like, stopped caring. But at that point, I guess I was like, okay, well, I mean, I guess I'll just stay in the area. I guess when I turn 18, I'll get a job, maybe learn how to drive, and I don't know, eventually get my own apartment. Like, I didn't really have, like, a concrete thing in my mind. I wasn't really thinking, like... and the only reason at that point I didn't drop out of school was because I wanted to drop out of school and work, but I couldn't because I didn't want my dad to get in legal trouble, because he was supposed to be homeschooling me, and I didn't want to get him to get in trouble for me dropping out, like, if he wasn't, you know, I don't know. So I was struggling with this a lot. And, so I do want to go back. I go back to a long time ago. I'm not really sure where this, like, seed, where this, like, implant, like, where this kind of thing got planted in me. I'm not really sure where it started, or, like, what the origin of it was. But I think also, I mean, there's always some notion of like being a small town girl, haha. Like I'm literally the definition of the girl in Don't Stop Believin'. But anyway, I had this like sense of I wanted something bigger. I wanted something else, and I didn't really know. I don't know. I just had this sense of that, and for some reason, I'm not really sure how this development happened. I got latched onto this idea that I belonged in New York City. I needed to go to New York City. I got this like idea in my mind. I don't know where this came from. Like, honestly, I think just when I was younger, I read books and stuff, and you see it in the movies, all that. It's hard for me to really say exactly where that came from, but I just remember having this like sense in my mind, like I just felt like it would be this like magical experience in my mind, and I just had this like sense of, and I got to a point where I was kind of thinking I would love to live there for like a year, just to like experience it. I think that'd be so cool. But I'm thinking like, oh, when I'm 25, like I'm thinking once I have a car, once I have a job, once I know what the fuck I'm doing with my life. But at that point, I just had like no concrete plans. So this was actually before my mom passed, I think. So my aunt was telling me that she had taken her daughter. It's not actually her daughter, but it's somebody it's her friend's daughter, or somebody who she helped raise, whatever. She had taken her to New York for her 17th birthday, and I had always wanted to go to New York, so I'm like, hi, can you take me to New York for my 17th birthday? And this is something that is kind of sad and kind of difficult, but I had never really expected anything like nice from people, or like big gifts like that, because my family could never afford it. It's not like they didn't care about me or they didn't want to give me nice things. It was just they couldn't really afford to do that. And my aunt was like, yeah, sure. I was like, I was like not expecting this. And this was like 2 years before, this actually ended up happening. And, I kind of had that in my mind, and I was like, okay. And I had never been to New York at the time, and actually told my mom I was going to move there right before she passed away, which was so weird. Such an odd experience, and I didn't know anything. I'd never even been there. I just had this like weird like compulsion. Kind of like I felt like I had been pulled to Virginia Tech for months, and then I went there and I was kind of like, I didn't know how to feel. It just didn't feel right. And I had this like compulsion, this feeling, just for this like longest time, that I needed to go to New York. And I couldn't really tell you why. Like, I'm not religious, but like I don't know. Like I had this like extreme like compulsion, this extreme like just feeling. I'm like, I need to make this happen. And so what ended up happening was I was like flunking out of school basically. I just straight up wasn't doing a lot of my work because I was depressed. I didn't realize I was depressed. I had never had depression before. I had anxiety all of my life. It just felt like a fact. But I had never had depression before, and because I never had depression, I kept thinking it was like grief related. Like it was onset by that, but I kept thinking it was grief related. It would go away. I kept thinking like, okay, 6 months a year, it will go away. It will go away, right? And I started having symptoms I had never had before. Like I would fall asleep during the day, and like stuff that I had just never been able to do before. And it was something that I was just having these like really weird symptoms, and I don't even know. It was just something that was super difficult for me. And I kept telling my dad, like, oh yeah, I'll catch up over the summer. Oh yeah, I'll do this. And then I wouldn't. And, he said at the time he felt like I was lying to him. And I wasn't not trying to do that. And, he understands now what was going on, but like, I had no idea what was going on. And I kept thinking, the reason I said that was because I kept thinking I would get better. I would feel better. And I just didn't. And I just felt horrible. And I realized I was just like stuck in this like rut for like 2 years, and I had like no motivation to do anything. It was a lack of motivation, a lack of being like, nobody was motivating me to do stuff. It was just like my classes were the only thing I did. That was the classes like outside of the house, and like dance. That was like the only thing I did. Other than that, I would like sometimes do things, and like nobody was motivating me to do anything. I would just sit at home by myself. It was just I don't know. I wasn't motivated, and I didn't really have concrete plans. I wasn't like looking forward to like, man, when I'm 18, everything's, I wasn't even like that. I was just had no concrete plans, and I would have dropped out of school and started working, but again, I didn't want to get my dad in trouble for all this, and this is a whole long thing. So, the reason I never left homeschool, the reason I never actually said, hey, this isn't working out, and the reason at first I didn't know what was going on, but second of all, I never took a risk. And the reason I had so few friends and all that was because I was like scared of myself, and I was like scared of making friends almost, because I'd be scared that they would leave me. And yeah, it fucking hurts. I've had so many friends just ditch me and just weird shit happen, but it's really unfortunate. But that's something that but I do have legitimate and real friends. But something that has been really difficult for me is keeping friends and just having this like sense of community, which is something that I still don't really feel that I have in a sense. And it's something that I just try to be careful about. And so essentially all of this was happening, and in the back of my mind I kept thinking, is she actually gonna do this? Is she actually gonna take me to New York? Like, that was just something that was kind of like, I didn't really like think about it too much. And then it came up. It was getting around the time of my 17th birthday, and I'm talking to my aunt, and she's like, yeah, I just need to like figure out the dates and stuff. And I'm like, are you serious? And I was like, whoa. So at that point, I was like, I had something to look forward to, and I was like, oh my god, I'm so excited. I want to do this. I want to take this risk, right? But at this point, I just thought this was going to be a weekend in New York. I had like no plans for like any bigger, like any sort of like life plan event or anything. I was just like, oh yay, I get to have a weekend in New York. Like, I was just excited for that. And it ended up being a couple months after my birthday, just because of when we could work it out for driving and stuff. And we went up to see them in Connecticut, and and we got on the train and we went to New York. And actually, one thing I want to mention, sorry, before I get to this, one thing I do want to mention is, I had been in a car accident the year before, in 2018. Now, I was fine. I wasn't severely, I wasn't like hurt or anything, but the car got totaled, and it was just kind of a disaster. And, I was not driving. My dad was driving. I was not old enough to drive in my state, but, anyway, it was just a weird accident, and the car got totaled, and nobody was hurt, all that. But it was a situation where I'm thinking, oh, maybe I'll drive when I'm 18. I know a lot of people drive when they're 16, but I wasn't like jumping at that opportunity, because I have a lot of anxiety issues, and I always had an issue of being like very jittery. Like, I always thought that I was going to like be jittery and like break stuff, or like accidentally crash my car into someone and kill them. If like that was just how my anxiety always was. So, after being in this accident, I was way more jittery. I was way more shaky in the car. So, like, my dad would, like, make a turn, and I'd be like, we're gonna crash. Like, that was where my brain... So, like, at that point, I'm like, I can't drive. Like, I had no plans of driving. I just didn't even... That wasn't something I thought about. So, it was the next summer. It was 2019 when I went to New York City, and, I don't really know how to explain it, and I don't... Okay, so, actually, before... Sorry, I keep going back. Before I actually went to New York, we were staying with some friends somewhere along the way, and we were staying at this person's house. They actually weren't there, and like, I couldn't get the Wi-Fi to work, and I'd been on a long trip, and I didn't sleep well, and I was just like upset, and I just got really upset and kind of had like a meltdown. And having a meltdown at this point, also, I did have an autism diagnosis, but I didn't really understand my autism very well at the time. But anyway, I had a meltdown, and I remember talking to I kept thinking, I was like in a place I didn't know. I just like, I wanted to go back home. Like, I didn't want to be there. And it was just so difficult for me. I'm like, I didn't want to be there, and like, this whole situation wasn't working out, and I was like, I'm scared. And as I said, I have so much anxiety. I get so upset over little things. I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can go to New York. Like, I was in that like terrible. So we talked to my aunt, and she's still like, yeah, and she said that's okay. Like, if you can't go to New York, you can still come up and see us. We'll figure it out, whatever. And so we went up, and we spent a day there. I was at the beach, and I kept thinking, and I was like, yeah, no, I totally want to do New York, because I felt a lot better the next day. I'm like, I'm sorry, I was just feeling really weird last night. I totally want to do this. And my aunt's like, yeah, awesome, whatever. So we did this, and I was so stoked. I had just my entire life, I felt like I'd been waiting for that moment, and it was an extremely emotionally difficult trip. First of all, I learned a lot of things about New York. It was very eye-opening. And one other thing I want to mention is that after the 2016 election, my views on everything was kind of shifted, and I started to also realize that the area I live in is not the most progressive politically, and I also became more progressive politically because of just, like, who I'd been around, how I was raised was just kind of something that I ended up, shaking off, and then I spent more time online, and I just kind of, like, learned that stuff, and it was a long, weird journey for me. It's a long story, but, so I had become a lot more progressive politically at this point, so I was starting to feel like I didn't belong where I live currently. Like, I started to feel like I'm just not happy here. And so anyway, I was so stoked to go to New York, and it was an emotionally, like, difficult trip. But I'm saying I learned about, like, the wealth, like, how bad the, like, wealth disparities are, how much you've got, like, the people, because my impression was always, oh, all the poor people live in the city, and then I go to Manhattan, and I see all these fucking rich people, and all these homeless people, and I'm just like, it was something that just, like, I didn't expect to see, and then it was, like, realizing how expensive it was to live there, and then I was like, I need to live here, and it's like, you can't afford it, like, it's too expensive, and I was like, oh, okay, and I was kind of like, well, and then, we just talked about a whole bunch of emotionally difficult stuff. It was just this whole thing, which was just so emotionally difficult. This entire trip, I had an amazing time, but it was just something, and every moment of it, I don't regret a moment of it. So, because my aunt has always been, like, super supportive of me no matter what, and it's just something that I do not regret a single moment of that trip, and she was genuinely so amazing, and, so this was something, so we went to the Empire State Building. She had never been either. I mean, she had been to New York lots of times on business, but she'd just never gone up the Empire State Building, and, we did it during the day, and it was a really cool experience, and, like, this is awesome, and we need to come back at night, so we came back at night, and this was legitimately the single moment, like, yes, the entire trip was a life-changing experience for me, but this was the, like, singular moment when, like, the veil was lifted and my life changed. And I want to say all this, I want to be very clear that this did not, like, cure my depression, or it wasn't like, oh, I'm totally fine now, I know exactly what I'm doing. Like, nothing is black and white like that, and I want to make that abundantly clear. But I had this, like, extremely just eye-opening moment, because I remember stepping out. It was so beautiful. I had never seen anything like it. Looking down all around at New York City at night from the Empire State Building, and I remember asking my aunt to take pictures because I was just so mesmerized I couldn't even take pictures. And my entire life, people would say that I had heard people like my mom say, oh, wait, or something about, oh, it's happy tears, or, crying about something happy, or crying, oh, this is just so beautiful, I moved by, and I'm like, I never understood that. Like, I was just like, I don't even cry much when I'm sad. I'm like, I only cry when I'm angry, really, or just, like, when I'm tired. Like, and that's even true to this day. It's hard for me to cry, like, when I'm actually sad, but it's just something that is, like, that I struggle. If I only really cry when I have, like, a breakdown or a meltdown. But anyway, this experience was just so life-changing, and I don't think I, like, realized at the time how, like, life-changing it was, but being able to look back 2 years later, it's just such an insane experience. And I wasn't, like, bawling my eyes out, like, not like that, but I was tearing up. Like, I could not, like, it was so, this situation that, like, I couldn't even describe what I was feeling. Like, I still can't. And the one thing that I saw outside of it just being, like, so beautiful, like, the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen was endless possibilities. That was, like, the number one thing that I saw. It felt like, and yeah, the weird thing is when you're actually driving down there, it's like, yeah, the city's really big, but then you get to, like, certain points and it's just marshland, like, outside of the city, and, like, it does not go on forever, you know what I mean? But from where I was, and from how the lights went off, it just felt like it went on forever. It was just endless, and just an endless sea of possibility. And that was legitimately a life-changing experience for me. Now, I also realized during this trip that school wasn't happening, and I told my aunt, well, because I didn't want to drop out because I didn't want to get in trouble, so I said I'll do one more year, and then I'll get my GED. That's what I told her. I'm not going to worry about graduating. I'm not going to worry about getting those hours in. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to do one more year the best I can and then get my GED. I told my dad that, and, everyone was like, that's fine. That's totally fine, right? So I went back. I went back home, and I started having severe depression at this point. So I had pretty bad depression. I had been stuck in this specific rut for 2 years where I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And now I knew where I wanted to be, and I knew what I wanted to do, but I had no idea how I was achieving it. It just felt so unrealistic, and I was just stuck in this just complete mental rut, and I was just desperate. And I had this eye-opening experience where I wanted so much more, and I realized what I wanted, and I had a purpose again. I had a goal. I had an actual conceivable goal thing that I wanted to do, but it just felt so unattainable at that point. And because I just lived so far away, and just every time I was just struggling really hard. And also there was some other stuff going on in my personal life. So as the fall went on, there was some stuff going on in my personal life which did not help the situation, because I was very sad and very depressed about other things. But I just had this sense of I have to go back. I have to go back. I have to go back. I had this insane compulsion. I'm this is the place for me. I need to go back. I need to go back just to be sure that this is right for me. And I had this feeling this is the only place I can be happy. And I was just in this mindset where I'm I have to go back to New York. I need to go back. I was just begging. I was can somebody take me to New York, please? I told my dad, I would go, if you just take me for Christmas, blah, blah, blah. And it was nobody had any money to take me, and it was just this whole situation. I was just I need to go. And I was still 17 at this point, so I couldn't travel by myself. I didn't have money. I didn't have a bank account at this point. I didn't have anything. There was no way I could travel by myself. Just want to say that. So, it was just so desperate, and I was so depressed. I did not do well. And then 2020 started, and I get into the first 2 months of the year, and my mental health, so I get into February, and my mental health is the best it's been in 3 years. I'm thinking realistically, I'm looking at prices and stuff. I'm looking at all that. Oh, how much would I realistically have to make? What kind of job? And at this point, I'm just looking at service sector jobs. I'm I could just do Starbucks, and I'm looking at this, and I'm figuring this all out. And at this point, I was on a high. I was so excited. I was so stoked. I was gonna go back to New York that summer. I was I get to go in the summer, right? And with where I was gonna see my aunt, we were gonna all get pizza in New York, and this was this whole thing, because I wanted to take my dad as well. And then COVID happened, and my mental health was the worst it had been in 4 years. And at this point, I don't think the number one thing was I need to get back to New York. It just became the number one. It just became I need to do anything. I need to get out of my fucking house. I can't do this. And when the first lockdown happened, and yes, I was very upset. Oh yeah, I actually had concrete plans to go to New York and concrete plans to travel by myself, but that's another story. But I was very, very upset. Obviously, I was devastated. I was upset. I was disappointed that I couldn't do that. However, because at first I didn't know how long it was going to go on for, but once I realized that wasn't going to work out, of course I was upset. But at that point, it was just so much depression from just everything I was doing, and also I couldn't really get anything done because school kind of finished for the term, and then I just wasn't feeling good, and I just didn't know what to do. I turned 18. I'm so lost. I'm what the fuck am I supposed to do now? And I just kept thinking stuff was gonna get better, and it just didn't. And then I ended up, realizing I got tired of sitting around, and summer went by, and I did the summer program online at this school, and that was the time, and I got tired of sitting around, and I decided to finally go get work, and I was really scared because I had never worked, and I didn't know if I could do it, and I just, I went to this job program my caseworker got me involved with, and, I got over there, and I got hired at my first job, which was very, very quickly, and it was not a good experience. It was an issue, but it did give me something to it was like a few months before the cracks really started to show, and it did give me something to keep me going through that time. And so I had that job. I've had another job since then that I just left because of this, and I am going to be applying for more jobs tomorrow, so wish me luck on that. But anyway, so I've had 2 jobs now, and I'm going to be getting another one. So working definitely helped me a lot because it gave me some sense of like purpose and something to do. I was actually making money. I could actually buy myself things for the first time in my life. I didn't feel useless anymore, and that was like a huge step that I took. Well, like just to like all that, and like even just becoming like doing it all stuff. And it was always stuff I talked about, like, oh, I should take the bus for myself, I should do this, I should, like, I always talked about all the things I wanted to do or should do as like no-brainer, and then I just never did. I was just terrified, and to do anything, to just take risk. I was like, I didn't want to go outside of my comfort zone. And, you know, I finally started working. I worked in my town, walking distance, you know, everything that didn't want to go outside my comfort zone, whatever. And eventually, you know, I got money, I started working, you know, I got all that stuff, and, you know, it's kind of a step at a time situation. And then, you know, so summer comes up, and, you know, we're starting to plan vacation, and it took some convincing because of the whole situation, because my aunt wasn't going to be able to make it to the city just because of COVID and all that. And it took some convincing, and I convinced my dad to take me to New York, and I was like, I have to show you, this is so important. And he was like, I said, you know, I'm going to go here by myself if you don't, you know, because at that point I have money. I was like, I'm going to go by myself if you don't, like, take me. And he said he was terrified because his only experiences were, he grew up in the suburbs, and he had this experience with a taxi driver where he almost got, you know, he and my mom, they started to follow this guy into the alley, this guy who was probably a scammer or a creepy dude. And the whole situation was just really uncomfortable. And yes, they walked away from the situation before it escalated, but I just still am like, how would you be stupid enough to even do that? Like, because I said I have this like inherent sense of street smarts. Anyway, so my dad was like super nervous, and I'm like, we're gonna do this. And, you know, I was able to talk to him, and he you know, he finally agrees. And because it's this situation this whole time, it's just like, you don't know what you're doing. You barely know the city. You don't know what you're doing. And I was like, trust me, it will be fine. And in August, you know, I finally get it to work out. He gets hotels and everything, and we figure it out. And once I walk in, I start, you know, leading him around, and I'm even going to places I haven't been before. I'm just like, I'm using my Google Maps and stuff to navigate, to get around, and I'm just like, the whole time, I'm just like being very just on point, very efficient, you know, whatever. And also, going back reaffirmed that that is where I wanted to be, because I wanted to make sure. I was like, well, what if I change my mind, you know? And that did reaffirm that for me, because, you know, that intense like wave of I gotta go back had like worn off at that point, just because it had been so long. But so I like to joke and call it New York withdrawals, that whenever I go to New York and come back, I have withdrawals. And my New York withdrawals had like worn off at that point, but when I went back, I'm like, shit, this is what I need. Like, this is what I need to do. I figured out, I'm like, oh, I think I want to live in Jersey. I think I can make this work. And at that point, I was like, no fucking way I'm ever driving. And then I was like, I'm gonna have to find a roommate. And then at the same time, my aunt and uncle are trying to get me into a school. And I had never thought I would go back to school, but I've got this like amazing opportunity that just came up, and I'm not going for a degree right now, but like I'm just gonna do stuff, just kind of do it for fun and just for the college experience, just so I can have some experience living somewhere before I like move. And that was something that was like, you know, coming together in that sense. And now, and I just quit my second job, which was a job that I had been treated in a way that I didn't like, and I was looking for a reason to quit. And honestly, you know, I'm sticking up for myself, and I'm realizing I deserve better. And it's a situation where I'm taking that step, and I am advocating for myself. I am in a situation where like, I deserve better. And trust me, not everything's perfect. I still have, now, it's not nearly as bad as it was when I first went, but I am having withdrawals again, which to me is a good sign, because it means that's what I want. New York is where I need to be. But on the other hand, having this like mentality of like, well, what if I'm not going to be happy when I get there? I'm going to have to work all the time. I'm going to have to do stuff. And it's just kind of like the situation of like, but I won't be happy anywhere else. That's like the bottom line. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, happiness is in you. It's where you take it, you know, that kind of thing. It's like, yeah, I get that, but I can't live here anymore. Like, it's so hard for me. And, you know, so I had this trip planned, and I still have this trip planned, and I'm not going into detail about what the trip is. It involves New York, but I'm not going into detail about what I'm doing or where, because I don't want to, like, just for safety reasons and all that. Coming up in a couple months, and I was super excited, and I was telling my aunt and uncle about this, and then I was kind of like, I need some money. I was a little worried about it, and they're like, well, we don't want to loan you money because basically we don't think it's safe. And I was like, are you serious right now? Like, are you actually serious? And they're like, we don't support this. And I was like, you don't perceive the danger of traveling by yourself. And I'm just like, are you crazy? Like, oh my God. I was just like, I've been ready to do this for 2 years, and like, I need to just take that step. Yeah, I'm scared too, but like, I need to do it. It's something that I have to do. The more I think about it, I mean, it's terrifying. It really is, but it's something that I have to do. And, you know, we're going through measures to make it as safe as possible and everything. And my dad, you know, when we were driving back from where we were going today, we were talking about, you know, and I said, you know what, Dad, this is why I have to take a step. I'm 19 and a half. And I said, you drove across to California. You left everything at home and drove to California by yourself to go live with your dad when you were 18. Like, I told him that. I'm like, that's what you did, and you don't regret that, do you? And he's like, no. And I'm like, even though the experience ended up, you know, being tricky and it ended up being short-lived, you know, he ended up coming back east, it was still an experience that was, you know, valuable, and even though things didn't go the way he planned exactly, it was something that was still a good experience, and a learning experience. And I heard that, and I, you know, I said that. I'm like, yeah, you don't regret that, do you? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, this is why I just have to do things. I just have to go out there and take those steps, even when I'm scared, because I have found that doing it and stepping outside of that comfort zone has been so much more rewarding for me than sticking to my, like, comfort zone has ever been. And it's something that I, you know, have, and again, I'm still struggling, I'm still working on it, but now, I'm leaving for school soon, and now I have, like, a concrete path out of where I live, which is just such, oh my God, it's like, I have a concrete path out, I have plans down the line, I think I know where I want to live, I need to figure out that stuff later on, but I'm still, you know, that's all kind of thing, and it's just, my whole life, I feel like things are finally coming together. Now, I probably shouldn't say that, because since some shit like COVID is going to come along and jinx it again, because that was what was happening last time I felt like things were coming together. But anyway, I'm not letting life get in the way of my plans again, and and I know what I want, and I know how to get it, and there's still a lot to figure out, and it's not going to be easy, and, you know, but I'm still figuring that out, but you just have to take that step, and I'm an adult, so nobody can stop me from doing anything as long as I have the resources myself, and I'm taking that step. I am going to take this trip, and then I'm going to go to school, and then I'm going to move and be independent, and I'm taking that step, and it's a big step towards independence right there that I've not been able to take, and I'm doing it. So, yeah. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you liked the video. I know it's a bit of a different kind of video, but if you like it, please click like, go to the, you know, subscribe, and comment if you've had any experiences like this. I know this is a really weird experience, but it's really interesting for me. So, yeah, you know yourself best, and do what you need to do, whatever that may be.